Hi, this is Gina Verso. I'm here at Long Beach Comic Expo. I'm here with comic book writer Ron Marz.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you. How have you been doing so far?
Since I'm in a much warmer climate than I'm used to, I am perfectly happy.
And you said you had a panel here earlier. How did that go? It was on science fiction?
Yeah, I was part of a panel with one of the engineers from NASA engineer from the Apollo project, and so I just was like a fly on the wall. I would have been more than happy to be a member of the audience, but they had me talking about the sensibility of science fantasy, science fiction, and how it relates to inspiring the real science that came afterwards. So it was great. It was I was flattered to be on it.
Yeah, and a lot of your work, Kyle Rayner, Green Lantern, deals a lot with, space and the planets. Have you researched any of the cosmos, or how much research do you usually do?
We talked about that at the panel, actually. And
okay.
It was, the real answer is I do enough research to make you guys think I know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
So, not specifically scientifically accurate, but we want you to think that it's accurate, so that you're not pulled out of the story, so that the veneer of believability is still in place, and that you can just engage with the characters and move on with the story. But I was a big fan of space exploration and the shuttle program and all that stuff when I was a kid, and it just sort of I think there's a fairly big crossover in that Venn diagram of science fiction and fantasy and comics with the real life application of that stuff as we reach out for the stars. There are a lot of comic creators who are kind of big space buffs.
Yeah, of course. And going off of that, can you talk a little bit about, we're talking about science fact, but what about science fiction? Any influences?
Oh yeah, I mean that's what I grew up on. I grew up on Edgar Rice Burroughs and Robert E. Howard, Tolkien, Robert Heinlein, Asimov, Bradbury,
Clark.
Oh yeah, all that stuff. So we actually, even at the panel, we talked about like that old joke of what's the golden age of science fiction? Well, it's 12. Because the stuff that you discover at 12 years old is the stuff that sticks with you for the rest of your life, and that's totally
true.
happened with me. All the paperback books I read as a kid, all the comics I read at that age. That's completely why I do what I do now, and Star Wars, frankly, was a huge. Was a seminal moment for me because I was 11 years old in the summer of 1977, and seeing that Star Destroyer fly overhead
and keep going
for about 3.5 years,
exactly,
changed my life.
And just going off of Star Wars, because that brings me to another question. You famously did a Darth Maul comic miniseries, and he was surprisingly in Solo. And he's, kind of had this resurgence, and, you worked with a character on the miniseries. How's it like to see that character kind of get this, resurgence again?
It's cool. I mean, I thought he was certainly the best character that came out of the prequel trilogy. I might not be completely unbiased, but I just, I thought the look was great. The way he moved was great. He was a worthy villain.
Yes.
And you've got to have worthy villains for your heroes. And I obviously am, fairly close to the character because of writing the miniseries, writing a Darth Maul versus Darth Vader story for Star Wars Tales, and the God's honest truth is I have a life-size Darth Maul statue in my basement. So
nice. Just need Ray Park to sign it.
Yeah,
exactly. Just changing gears here a little bit. The Kyle Rayner was the Green Lantern of the 90s. He's lasted 20 or almost almost like 30 years. How is it to kind of see this character grow and just get he's been rebooted, he's in different mediums. How do you feel?
It's flattering, honestly. I mean, you never know what you create that will last, that will stand the test of time, and will strike a chord with the audience. So I'm thrilled that Kyle's still around. I'm thrilled that he's still got a fan base. it was very of the moment for us. It was very much DC was sort of doing the legacy characters, Kyle, Wally West, Connor Hawke. So I feel like I'm very fortunate to have been able to do my Green Lantern, very much kind of patterned after the everyman archetype, as probably best embodied by Peter Parker. I mean, I grew up reading Marvel books. I grew up a Marvel kid. So I was drawn more to the heroes who had feet of clay, who were more relatable, rather than a guy who's a test pilot. I think Hal Jordan's a great character,
right?
But he's already a hero.
Yeah,
like, he's a hero before he ever puts the ring on. So for me, I wanted to write a story that was about somebody becoming a hero, somebody living up to the responsibility of that mantle. And so look, Spider-Man was formative for me, and we kind of did our version of that Spider-Man myth in the DC universe.
Yeah. And were you ever surprised that there was never a artist Green Lantern before that?
Well, in a lot of ways, Green Lantern is a special effects book. It's about, well, what sort of cool stuff can you make with that magic ring?
Exactly.
And so one of our bylaws basically was that Kyle would not make the same thing with the ring twice. Like, it had to be different every time. Because if you could make anything you could think of, why would you make a boxing glove over and over?
Yeah, exactly.
So that was really one of the ways we approached the book, was that this has to be as visually exciting as possible. It has to be something cool to look at.
Yeah. And I know it wasn't in your Green Lantern run, but I think in Grant Morrison's Justice League, I forgot the line, but it's the worst nightmare is a Green Lantern who's an anime fan too. Yeah.
Grant. I thought Grant did an awesome job with Kyle. Grant does an awesome job on virtually everything. But Grant really got what we were doing with Kyle, which is he's a regular guy. Yeah. And in the Justice League, he was a lot of times sort of your point of view character, because he was a regular guy who was surrounded by these other characters who were essentially gods.
Exactly. And he was probably the rookie teammate out of all of them too.
Oh yeah, it allows you to look at Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman and Martian Manhunter a little differently if you can see those characters through the eyes of somebody who's not used to being around.
Exactly. And just winding down, last few questions. The Green Lantern movie might see in the next couple years.
Let's hope. Do
you have anyone, any film actor or director that you would kind of your wish list for the film?
I don't. I never get into casting concerns or anything like that, because that's somebody else's job. There's all sorts of people that could do a great job, but it all starts with the script. You have to have a good script, and if I could pick any director, I would probably pick Denis Villeneuve, who
did amazing as Blade Runner.
Will likely be occupied on Dune for quite some time, but
let's hope so.
But visually, I think he's the most visually spectacular director working right now, and again, Green Lantern's got to be a visually spectacular movie.
Exactly. And last question for you, Ron. You worked in science fiction. What advice would you give to any science fiction writers out there?
If you're going to be a writer, you got to read. Read every day and write every day. There's some people that we all have a lot of really bad writing in us. And you have to work through all that stuff before you get to the good stuff, before you find your own voice, before you figure out who you want to be as a writer. So the sooner you get through that stuff, the sooner you sort the wheat from the chaff, to find your creative voice, the better off you are. So it's like working out any muscle. You got to do it every day.
Exactly. Well said. And Ron, where can people find you at on social media?
I am at Ron Marz on Twitter. That's the one I am most attached to. But there's a Facebook page and an Instagram account as well. But find me on Twitter. That's where I am most of the time.
Cool. And thank you for joining us, Ron. It's been a pleasure.
No problem. It's been great.